Have you ever wanted to shop at the refill store but you didn't know where to start? Let's go over everything you need to know about bulk shopping right here, right now. Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel where we talk about all sorts of things zero waste, focusing on free, easy, and fun ways to live low waste and ways that we can all be activists. I talk a little bit fast, I'm trying to work on it, but if it helps you out, there's a gear icon right down here where you can change to speed. And if you're a maniac, crank it up like I do. Now, I understand that not everybody can shop at the bulk store, not everybody can shop refilling. Maybe you don't have access to one, maybe you have allergies, or maybe it's too expensive for you. You don't have to shop at a refill store to be zero waste, to be part of the zero waste movement. I didn't shop at a refill store for like the first 4 to 5 years of my zero waste journey, and I only started doing it in like halfway through 2021. And even then, I didn't really get a whole lot at the refill store until like this last year. The point of this video is just to simply spread what I have learned over the last 4 years shopping at the refill store, helping you go if you have never gone before, you don't know where to start, but it is totally possible to get zero waste groceries even if you don't have access to a refill store, and I talk more about that in this video. I also have a full zero waste grocery guide for free up on my website. Anyway, let's get into it. What even is bulk shopping? Often called bulk stores in zero waste lingo, this term can be interchangeable with refill store, but there are some differences between the two terms. Bulk shopping is technically when you buy things in large quantities, usually to take advantage of cheaper prices by weight. This may or may not include packaging. Technically, you can shop in bulk while still shopping for items in packaging. Buy a 1-pound bag of pecans instead of buying 10 tiny bags of pecans, for example. Now, refill shopping is probably more what you're thinking of. Customers bring in their own containers to a store that allows them to refill said containers with package-free items. Greatly reduces packaging overall, but it's not entirely plastic free. And I'm not saying that to like slander refill stores and call them out. I'm just trying to spread awareness about what is actually happening at these refill stores. Because even the most eco method of getting your groceries is still not perfect. Items usually arrive at the refill store in some sort of packaging to prevent contamination and enhance cleanliness. Awesome, I love to see that. Sometimes this is single-use bags. Sometimes it's 5-gallon buckets that can be shipped back, sanitized, and reused. So while much of it can be reused, not all of it can. But of course, it still greatly reduces how much us as a community are relying on plastic. And if you thought that was shocking, you probably should check out this video next all about more hidden plastic. Alright, you know what a refill store is. How do you even find one? I usually start by going to my favorite Maps app, Google Maps, Apple Maps, Waze, whatever you use, and typing in a few different keywords to see what you find. These keywords might be zero waste store, refill store, bulk store, eco store, and things like that. And if none of that works for you, I highly recommend the EcoRate app. This free app allows you to find eco cafes and eco stores near you or while you're traveling. You can search for which establishment you want to find, but also search for specific items that you need to buy. For example, if you need flour, you can search for a refill store that carries it plastic free so that you can bring your own container directly, and you know exactly which stores have it in stock, so that way you don't have to hunt around. And if this still doesn't work for you, see if your town has a local co-op. I noticed that my personal co-op is not on the EcoRate app, but this is where I go to do most of my refilling. Chances are, yeah, you're probably only going to have a refill store if you live in a pretty sizable city or like in an eco-friendly city. And what I mean is, my city here, very, very small, but it's a town full of hippies. Of course, we're gonna have a refill store. All that to say, not everybody's gonna have one of these stores near you. So what can you do instead? When I lived in Minnesota last summer, 2024, we lived 5 hours away. I mean, we lived 1 hour away from a town, like where we got our groceries, but like any major city, Duluth was closer. It was like 3 hours, but Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities is where it's at. And we went there once over the entire summer. And so what we did was, and then when we were gearing up to go to the Twin Cities, we gathered all of our jars, made a stop at the refill store while we were in town, and that way we could have our refilled items when we went back up to the North Woods for the rest of the summer. I'm not saying that you have to go out of your way to shop at a refill store. That's a lot of gas, that's a lot of time. If you do live in a rural area, I just suggest that when you go to your big city, because you're gonna go eventually, take your jars with you and refill at that time. You know, if you run out of, say, your bulk rice before you make it to your next big city run, buy a bag of rice. Like, you don't have to go without that item just because it comes in plastic. Simply just use the refill store as a means to reduce waste where you can. Our next tip is to bring your own containers. That's kind of the whole point of shopping in the refill store, is to reduce your waste. Otherwise, if you don't have any jars or even plastic bins to refill, you can take anything to the refill store. It doesn't just have to be a jar. You can use their plastic and paper bags that they have available. But let's take that extra step to reduce where we can, because reducing is better than recycling. So here's how you do this. You can bring just about any container that you want. Glass jars, bottles, plastic tubs, old sour cream containers, stainless steel boxes, fabric bags, you name it. But there is one thing that must be done. They have to be clean. I'm not saying you have to like scrub them with a stainless steel scrubber and boiling hot water and a bunch of soap. Simply just run it through the dishwasher. If you don't have a dishwasher, give it a decent wash by hand. The point is that we want to prevent the spread of contamination, whether that be germs or allergens. And also ensure your jars are dry as well. For example, if you throw them in your dishwasher overnight and you get them out of the dishwasher and you're going right to the refill store immediately in the morning, they might still be a little bit damp from being in the dishwasher. So for me, I will take a towel and wipe it down, or I will just leave the jar open in my bag with no lid on it until I get to the refill store and hopefully it dries out in time. And this is mostly just for your own sake because nobody wants water in their flour or their rice. If you're using a repurposed jar like an old pasta jar, it is not necessary to remove the label if you don't want to. Quite frankly, I am too lazy and I don't care that it's ugly, but your barcode may cause problems. So you can remove just this section, remove the barcode section, or you can draw over it with Sharpie, tape over it, or you can add the store's sticker labels on top of the barcode so that it doesn't accidentally get scanned. We'll come back to the store's stickers here in a moment. But for now, the next tip is to know what you need. I find it very effective to go into the bulk store with a plan. This is just always a great idea no matter where you're grocery shopping, how you're grocery shopping, to go in with a list so that you don't overconsume. When I'm making my grocery list, I like to write down items that we run out of and then I mark them with a star on my grocery list. This reminds me that these items need a container when I go shopping and allows me to have the precise number of containers that I need. But sometimes you might not have enough jars. You can still go to the refill store even if you don't have jars. They very often have plastic bags or paper bags that you can use. And some refill stores also have like a little jar donation area where you can donate old jars that you are trying to declutter. And if you don't have enough jars, you can take one of those jars and refill yourself. Or you can even head to the thrift store and check for empty jars at the thrift store, give them a good clean and take those as well. And if you want to be sure that something is in stock, the EcoRate app can help with that, as well as you can just check the refill store's website to see if they have a stock list available. Moving on to probably the most complicated part about refill shopping, and that is weighing your containers, marking them properly so that you don't pay for the weight of the jar. Way too often I get people on my videos being like, oh my gosh, shopping at the refill store is so expensive because you're paying for the weight of the jar. No, if you weigh your stuff properly, if people are inputting stuff properly at the cash register, you will not be paying for the weight of the jar. You will only be paying for the weight of the goods that you're buying. So we can solve this by getting the tare weight. This is the weight of your jar totally empty. Nothing should be in there when you get the initial weight of the jar. That way, when you fill it with, say, raisins, you can subtract the weight of the jar and know that you are only paying for the raisins. My best advice here is to do this at the store. Yes, even if you have a kitchen scale. Every scale is going to be a little bit different. Much rather go to the store and use the same scale that they're going to use to weigh my jar empty versus weighing my jar filled. Instead of, say, what if my scale at home is not quite as sensitive and then I end up paying for a little bit of the weight of the jar. And this is where it's going to vary store by store. When I used to shop at Sprouts in Las Vegas, which is a pretty common Western chain, they did not have scales in their bulk section. So therefore I had to take my empty jars up to the register and they had to do all of the tare weights for me. But my current refill store where I shop has scales in the bulk department, so I can do my own jar tare weights myself. Now, when you're doing the tare weight, at least in the US, it is most common to use pounds. So don't use grams, don't use kilograms, don't use any other form of measurement on the scale. Make sure you click through all of the different forms of measurement until you get to pounds. Once you put your jar on the scale and you find what the tare weight is, now it's time to mark the jar. Sometimes the store will have a grease pencil, sometimes they will have like just a little generic, like kind of garage sale type sticker. Sometimes they will have a full-on branded sticker with the tare weight and the PLU number, which we'll get to soon. Whatever your store has available to you, make sure that you write down your tare weight. If they have nothing available, find an employee and ask, or you can just simply, if you have a piece of paper or your notes app in your phone, write down the tare weight for each of your individual items and then they can subtract it based off of your list. I also just think it's really not a bad idea to, when you're going to a new refill store, head to the front, ask for help, find an employee. Yes, even if you're experienced. When I moved here, this was like my third or fourth refill store that I've shopped at in my life. I'm pretty confident I know what I'm doing at a refill store. Every single refill store might have different rules, different setup. It's always a good idea, if this is a new store to you, just ask what their rules are so that way you don't do anything wrong. And when in doubt, ask for help. If you are struggling with the scale, if you can't find the stickers, if you can't find a marker, just ask for help. All right, you have your jars, you got their tare weight, it's time to refill. So let's talk scoop etiquette. Now, every store, once again, is going to be different here as well. Even amongst the same store, like my store here, have different scoops and different means of getting you your goods throughout the store. We have some that are lever dispensers. We have some with like really big scoops. We have some with like tablespoon scoops. We've got a liquid refill section as well. So in some sections of my refill store, each bin is designated a scoop with like a little cord on it. My nutritional yeast is that way. The flour is that way. The oats are that way. Use that scoop. If the bin has a scoop attached to it, use that scoop. But in other sections of my refill store, such as the herbs section, there's all of the jars of herbs with no scoops in them. There's a jar of clean scoops and there's a jar of dirty scoops. Make sure that you're using a clean scoop. Do not contaminate the rest of the stuff with a dirty scoop. And then when you're done, guess where you're gonna put it? In the dirty scoop bin. If the spoon or the scoop is too big for your jar and you think that you're going to have to touch the scoop to your jar, see if they have some funnels. Every bulk store that I have been to, besides Sprouts, has had funnels. If there's not a funnel, you can typically fashion one yourself out of a paper bag. I will use funnels, again, if the scoop is too big for my jar, and also for the dispensers. One, to prevent my jar from touching the dispenser, and two, because oftentimes the dispensers are kind of rectangular and my jar is a circle, and like there's gonna be some overlap where it doesn't meet. and then I'll get, chocolate chips or sunflower seeds all over the floor, and nobody wants that. So yeah, a bonus tip, please be mindful about making as little mess as possible. A little bit of a mess is inevitable. A few sprinkled herbs here and there, a grain of rice, whatever. And once again, I will just reiterate, please do your best to ensure that your jar does not touch anything communal. And also, be mindful of, if you're using a single-use scoop that's going to go into the dirty bin, it's only your scoop. Still don't let that scoop touch your jar because that scoop is going to go back into the dried basil. Okay, moving on to liquid refills because I royally messed this up when I tried liquid refilling for the first time. Liquid refills are by ounce and not by weight. And if you're like, wait, isn't ounce a unit of weight measurement? Yes, but it is also a unit of volume measurement. Liquids are measured by volume, not by weight. When I first got olive oil in bulk, this was here. I took the tare weight, fully expecting it to be subtracted because it was going to be by the pound. Nope, it is by the ounce. By the volume ounce. So I got to the register and they're like, how many ounces is your jar? I'm like, what do you mean? And my jar's label had already been removed, so we just had to guess. I felt really bad. So, if you're going to be getting liquid soap, soy sauce, vanilla, make sure that your jar is labeled by ounce. If you're like me and the label has already been removed from your jar, what you can do is take a liquid measuring cup at home, fill your jar with water, and then dump your jar into your liquid measuring cup to see how many ounces come out of it. And if you're unsure about if you should be labeling your jar with pounds or with ounces, weight or volume, just give them an ask. Once you have the stuff in your jars, it is now time to label your jars appropriately so that they can ring up the correct item and charge you the right amount. It's time to get the PLU number. This is the price lookup code. You can usually find it very easily on the front of the bin or the jar that you're getting your items from. This is especially important if the store has more than one of the same thing, such as dark chocolate chips and semi-sweet chocolate chips, and they look identical. Wherever you added the tare weight to your jar, add the PLU number to this area as well so that the cashier can find it easily. Write it clearly and legibly, and do this with all of your jars before heading to the checkout. Keep in mind, my personal experience is only in the US, though I have done refilling in 4 US states, and it has been very similar throughout all of those 4 US states. So I'm pretty confident that these in-store tips are going to be applicable anywhere in the US. When in doubt, just ask your questions to an employee. It's also really important to prevent food waste in general, but especially when shopping in the bulk section because it can actually be way too easy to overconsume. Of course, most stuff in the bulk section is dried goods, which can last years and years, but it's still important to be mindful about food waste. If it's an item that you don't use a whole lot of, take only what you need for that recipe. It can be easy to overconsume here as dispensers flow and you're excited about scooping, but you can also use the available scales to buy precisely what you need. Say for example, you only need 1 ounce of this herb and you're never going to use that herb again. You can use the scale to measure out exactly 1 ounce. And when you get home, be sure to store them in ways that help them last as long as possible too. If you use bags made of plastic, paper, or cloth, they may let air in. And if you want it to be as shelf stable for as long as possible, try a glass jar or an airtight plastic container. It might not also be a bad idea to write the date on there if you plan to keep this item for a long period of time. Let's move on to checkout. And yes, I do have advice for checkout, even though it's typically hands off because sometimes they will not subtract the tare weight and you might end up paying for the weight of the container. In this video, in which I wanted to compare the cost of refilled herbs to herbs that you can get pre-packaged, I didn't realize, unfortunately, until I got home that I was charged for the weight of one of my jars. My other jar was subtracted, but for the rosemary, it was not. I could have gone back, and I probably would have if they had done it to multiple containers, but accidents happen. If you notice a discrepancy, it's best to ask right away and simply just be kind. If you're at the register and you notice something lightweight costing way more than you intended it to, you could just say, "Excuse me, it looks like that dried basil rang in at half a pound. I don't think that's right. Do you think you could reweigh it and re-input the tare weight?" So you can ask in a very kind way. You don't have to, call anybody name. You don't have to be rude because sometimes maybe you were just not aware how much you scoop. Maybe you misread the PLU number. Maybe you read the initial unit weight. That has happened to us as well. So perhaps they did enter something wrong. Perhaps they did not see your tare weight. Mistakes happen, but mistakes can happen on your end too. So we live and we learn on both sides of the cash register. Simply just be kind. All right, at the end of the day, why in the world is shopping at the refill store so much more expensive? Yeah, some items are going to be more. For example, our chocolate chips, pretty expensive. And it feels weird because you're not paying for packaging, so surely it should be cheaper. Well, first, some items are always cheaper if they do the tare weight correctly. That is spices and herbs. For example, the basil in that video that I just mentioned was only 50 cents to refill my jar, but it was $5 if I were to buy a brand new jar of basil in the aisle. But other things like dish soap, lotion, chocolate chips, nuts, they do cost a little bit more. Well, unlike what you're used to buying at Walmart and Target and Amazon, this eco business has standards. It costs more money to pay people a fair wage. It costs more money to get your brand certified as fair trade or another eco certification. It costs more money to farm with sustainable practices than it does to pollute the earth. But it very well could also be that you're buying more than you're used to buying. This is also the case for our chocolate chips. When we buy a bag of chocolate chips and I open it and I put it in the jar, this is how much it fills. But when I refill my jar all the way to the top, I am paying simply for more product. It's not that the chocolate chips like individually are costing more to make and to get to my refill store. It's that I bought a bigger volume of chocolate chips than I'm used to. Therefore, it costs more. So no, your local refill store is not scamming you. This is actually what all of our goods should cost. But wasteful and unethical companies exploit people every step of the way, to include you. The fault is not small eco businesses. The fault is wasteful mega corporations that set this unethical standard. And you can learn more about why shopping small is so much better for the planet in this video. I have a full video coming on this topic soon if there's interest in it, diving into why shopping sustainably, why shopping small costs so much more. But again, if you can't shop at the refill store for whatever reason, price, accessibility, allergies, don't sweat it. Just find other ways in your life to be zero waste. Shop plastic free at the regular grocery store by buying a box of pasta versus a bag of pasta. See if you can drive less. See if you can use more reusables in your life. See if you can make some stuff homemade. You don't have to do it all to live zero waste. Work with what you've got. And if you're kind of a beginner to zero waste and you're like, where do I even start? Might I recommend my Zero Waste in a Year guide. This guide takes you through an entire year of zero waste living. Every single month we focus on a new topic, and in that guide, there's not a single mention of shopping at the refill store. There are over 360 ways to live zero waste in that guide that do not include shopping at the refill store, that do not really include buying a whole lot of swaps. It's mostly habit changes in your home. And when you buy my guide coming from YouTube, you get 15% off using code YouTube15. And if maybe you're not into that right now, I have a whole bunch of videos down below for zero waste swaps, zero waste habits, and how to start your zero waste journey. If you like this video, I bet you'll like this video next, which is a guide to thrifting. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your time, especially if you made it all the way to the end. If I missed any important refill store tips, please leave them down below for the rest of us. Let's keep this going. Let's inspire one another. Let's educate one another. And let's all do a little bit to reduce some waste. I will see you in the next video. But until then, remember that your small actions make a big difference in the long run. Bye, guys. I was just thinking, like, why have I not filmed on the floor recently? This is why. Because of the way that the Earth is currently positioned in the solar system. Also, my hair. If you hate it, don't tell me. I'm not gonna do it again. I tried heatless curls, Sequoia Siren, I just got them. A salmon life cycle, bulk shore.